start out, what I wanted to kind of talk about today is, we didn't get a chance to spend as much time on closing as we did. So I want to kind of go through, as we could have, I should say. So I want to go through some setup first, and then we can start talking about different closes, techniques, and any objections that you have and that you struggle with or anything like that. But I wanted to give you kind of a little bit of insight into what goes on in my head when I'm in a closing situation. We talked about it a little bit in class as far as being consultative. And so I kind of want to talk to you about that method, and then we'll get into just some, the back and forth on closing. So first of all, we've got a process. And remember in class I was talking about you got to be a good opener if you want to be a good closer. So we've got to use the process, right? And you guys can jump in anytime you want. You can say anything anytime you want, otherwise it'll just be me.
Okay.
And what I mean by the process is like the interview. We got to have product knowledge because we have to really know our products and be able to relate the benefits to the customer's life. I just mentioned the interview. The interview is where we get a lot of information, and if we shortcut that part of the process, we're going to very much limit our ability to close the customer. I'm not going to be able to teach you when they say this, you say that. I can teach you that. I gave you a word tracks in your book. Did you guys get those? There's like a...
I did, yeah.
Okay. And that's kind of when you do this, when they do this, you do that kind of a thing. It gives you some of the visual aids and how to set those up and that sort of thing. But it doesn't take the place of the interview and getting to know the customer a little bit. And we'll talk about why that's important in a second. Being able to do the menu disclosure, the left eye disclosure, the way we talked about it is important. Because it shortens that process, keeps their attention and interest, and allows you to get to the fun part a little quicker. And then you got to have skill and confidence. And skill and confidence comes from experience, but we can enhance that a little bit by knowing a little more about the customer. So all these three things go together, and then we just got to keep doing it. And if you do that, you'll be more successful in closing. So let's get into it a little bit. We talked about features and benefits. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time on that. I will talk to you about grouping, and that your first reaction when you're working with a customer is when they take a product, your thought process should be what goes with this. What goes with this and what makes sense for the customer. And when they leave one of these out, we want to make sure that we're pairing it with something else. Like I talked a minute ago about beginning with the end in mind as far as the interview. Again, you got to get out of your office. If you're not doing that, start doing it, and I think you'll see some positive results. So we talked about this a little bit, but this is important because how they're going to fit in a vehicle or on their bike, how they ride, how they enjoy riding, who rides with them, do they ride in a group or in the car world, how do they use that vehicle? Do they use it differently during the week than they do on the weekend? Are there multiple drivers? Is it a family vehicle? Is it a personal vehicle? Those types of questions are important as we're starting to get ready to think about how we're going to close. Now, here are some of these things that I think are super important when you're in that interview process. And we talked about all the questions that are on the right side of the left side of this slide. The right side are the money questions. When they ask you something to say, tell me more about that, or why is that important to you, or why did you feel that was necessary? Explain how that happened. Is there any other, those are the types of questions where they give you some information and these allow you to get a little more. And I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but it's super important to closing and multiple product sales.
Okay.
All right, so a couple of things for you to think about here. How solid is my left column menu disclosure, and how much thought have I put into the preferred column? If the preferred column makes sense based on what the customer says, it's your go-to when the customer says no. That's where you want to go back to first and really kind of talk about each one of those products and why you thought they were a good fit. If you haven't interviewed, if you don't know, it's difficult to do that. But It can be done, but it just limits your production. So they say no. Now what do? Remember, we talked about this in class. In their mind, the customer has to say, do I really need it? Is it worth it? Do I need it now? Those are the hesitations that we deal with over and over. If the customer is able to say yes to those, they'll say yes to the product. So we've got to get them there. So today's lesson, and what I want to really kind of talk to you about, is consultative closing and transactional closing opposed to selling. And what's the difference between consultative selling and transactional selling? Think about it this way. Transactional selling is about the product. Consultative selling is about the value. And that's what we want to talk about when we're talking about to the customers. When we can create value by putting the benefits of the product into their life, solving a problem, making their life easier, making it more convenient, those types of things, we get out of that transactional phase. You can tell you're in transactional phases when all you're talking about is what the product does. They're asking how much it costs. You're trying to justify the price. And if we don't do an interview, we really aren't doing anything other than transactional selling. And it gets us. It only gets you so far. It has its place, but it's difficult to get multiple products on one sale doing it that way. So next, a consultative process for securing a commitment. This is what goes on in my head. And this is what I'm thinking about when I'm with a customer. And this is where we're going to kind of get started here today. First of all, when I'm with a customer, or when you're with a customer, I want you to really focus in on them. You got to get those distractions out of your head. You can't think about the people that are coming in next. You can't think about how hungry you are. You can't think that you haven't gone to the bathroom in 4 hours. You got to think. You got to really focus in on them. You have to listen to understand, not listen to respond. And the reason that's so important is because you got to have patience. One of the things I see that holds people back from multiple products or in just about any closing situation is they're too quick to the close. They're too quick to solve. They're too quick to answer the objection. They're not getting all the information that they need. And I want to pull out everything I can pull out of the customer before I try to close them in just about any situation. As a matter of fact, I want to we've talked about isolating objections in sales, other than, is there any other reason why you wouldn't take the car home today, that kind of stuff. But there's no reason we shouldn't be doing the same type of thing in F&I, but we just do it a little bit differently. We ask questions to get to that isolation. I understand that makes sense, and you're not the first person that I've talked to about that. Others that I've talked to about that have also said that this is an issue. Would you agree with that? We start to have a little bit of a conversation versus they do this, you do that, kind of a closing situation. This speaks to the way we have to start thinking. When we're in a closing situation, we have to start thinking about, we have to have solution-based thinking, and we have to start thinking about solving instead of selling. And that puts you more into that consultative mindset. Customers will pick up on that based on your body language, your voice tone, inflection, and showing patience. I see both of you being able to do this, probably, Jeff maybe a little more naturally than Mike. But what do you think about it when I say solution-based thinking when you're in a closing situation versus selling?
Yeah, no, I understand it. Oh, sorry, Mike.
Go ahead,
Jeff. Go ahead.
No, I totally understand it. You more need to make sense of where they're coming from, so then that way, you can not just sell, but just kind of go over the, why it's better for this situation.
Yeah, and your natural demeanor, Jeff, plays into this pretty well, because you're pretty steady. You don't get excited. You're kind of even paced, and taking pauses to think about what you're going to say comes naturally. For me personally, I have to make myself do that because I fight with that listen to understand, not to respond, because I've heard them so many times that I kind of know how they're going to finish their sentence. And but the problem is my body language and everything gives me away. I'm just kind of like ready to go. What about you, Mike?
In regards to solution-based thinking, just trying to hear them out and try and give them like an example of a situation that'll happen, and this is a good way to solve that solution. That problem. This is what it takes care of for you. So
that's a great point, and I'm really glad you brought that up because what you want to do is in that, giving them a scenario, instead of telling them this could happen, tell a story. Talk about, let me share a story with you. I had a customer or whatever, and create that environment when you're talking, and it takes some of the sales part of it off.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to create a situation where, an example might be, I know you want to think about it, and that you can. Yes, you certainly can come in at the end of the warranty period and manufacturer's warranty period and go ahead and buy. But I want to share something with you. I had a customer that came to me and asked me if they could buy a service agreement, and I said sure. And I said, so I wasn't expecting to see you back here. You were so adamant against it. And then they told me, well, I just had a repair done in the service department, and it cost me almost $2,000. And I'm planning on keeping the vehicle for a little while, so I think I might take a look at that and see what we could do. And we talked a little bit, and he said, I kind of wish I would have listened to you. And I said, well, you're really going to wish you would have listened to me when I tell you the price, because it's higher now than it was then. And because now it's out of warranty, and you don't get any credit for that. And but regardless, here's the price. And we had that conversation. So I kind of want to share with you that right now, if you make the decision now, you enjoy the benefits of the coverage within the factory warranty as far as rental and roadside assistance, trip interruption, and towing. But you also have the benefit of not having to worry about it, make sure that you do it on time, and paying a higher price for a pre-owned in the future. So telling stories softens the sell and gets them thinking logically. It's a third party. They visualize it. They're not getting the pressure of me saying, hey, this is something that could happen to you directly, because then they start thinking, that's not going to happen to me. So tell them a story about somebody else, and they're more likely to listen and open their mind to it.
What about, so for me, like I do tell a story because it happened with my fiance. She bought a Jeep Grand Cherokee, and when I first started here, she was like, how many customers come in and actually get work done through their service contract? And I was like, that's a good question. I'm going to find that out. And then after that, she goes, warranty's a scam. Just cancel the warranty. And then, so I was like, okay. And this is while I'm talking to the customer, and I say, I kid you not, 3 days later, her backup camera breaks. She calls me, puts it in reverse. She's got this big backup camera. It's all blue. Now, it's not a big deal. If I hadn't had the coverage, it would have cost me $700 to have this repaired with parts and labor. It was a $100 deductible to me. And then 2 weeks later, her heater core went in her car. She kept telling me her heat wasn't working right, and I never drive her car. And then once I finally got into the vehicle, I was smelling antifreeze, brought it in, diagnosed it was a heater core. That job right there would have cost me $1,500 alone. So adding both of those in, that happened within a 2-month span, that would have cost me, just under $2,200 out of pocket. Now, so in my opinion now, it cost me $200, and I've not had to worry about anything. They replaced it. I don't have to listen to her complain to me about not having a vehicle because she had a loaner car, and, it just creates value that way, because I tell them, look, I was sitting in your seat at one time, and I work at an automobile. I'm in the car business, so if I need work done to these cars, you guys will give me a break on it. And that was my logic. But then when she told me all the equipment that the vehicle has, I started thinking, well, that's more and more stuff that's likely to break. And so I used that. And I also have an ECU on my desk, electronic control unit, and I have it sitting right behind me. It's only worked for me twice so far, where the customer asked me what it is. And I said, yeah, my previous customer came in, and we were kind of going back and forth about the pros and cons of a warranty. He ended up going with it and came in last week, handed me the parts, said, thank you very much. You just saved me $1,100, and this flux capacitor was covered under warranty. And they started laughing, and so that definitely works, giving stories. I'm definitely more of a transactional seller, and that's why I valued the course, because it showed me things that I'm doing that I had my own habits of and trying to break those now. So that's what I really like about all this.
Well, good. Well, the being able to give an example or a story is good. The other thing is that if you can bring in, one of the things that I talk to people when they say, I think they're a scam, and I'll say, well, let's talk about that for a second. And I would say, I don't hear the word scam a lot when we're talking about these products. And what makes you feel that way? And let them explain it to you. I listened to this, I listened to that. Dave Ramsey told me, I heard that you shouldn't buy them, and those types of things. And I like to say to people, I'd say, well, Dave Ramsey is awesome. First of all, I compliment their source. I don't get to listen to him all the time, but whenever I catch up, I always end up stopping and listening to him when he's on the radio. But here's something that you might want to consider. Is Dave Ramsey's opinion hasn't changed in probably 10 years on service contracts. And that's because he's not keeping up with the way vehicles are changing. Vehicles are so much more complex than they were when he first decided that vehicle service contracts weren't worth the money. It's a lot more expensive to repair a vehicle than it was 10 years ago, and they're components versus replacement parts. And here's one other thing that I'd really like to share with Dave Ramsey so he could share it with his listeners, is that most of the companies that we use to provide these service agreements tell us when they're trying to figure out what they need to charge for it, because they have to pay for claims, they figure that out of every dollar that they take in, they're going to pay out 80 cents in claims. That's how they determine their pricing. That's how they determine all of those things. So they're saying, okay, for every dollar we take in, we're going to pay out 80 cents. And what does that tell you? That tells you that they're paying claims. And as a matter of fact, last month in our service department, we did 872 repair orders. Of those 872 repair orders, 101 of them were paid by service agreements, or tire and wheel, or one of the products that I offer here. Be able to show them and give them statistics like that, and it really makes it real, versus Uncle Freddie told me it was a scam, because they don't have enough information to know that Uncle Freddie doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yep.
Okay. And that's logic. Remember this. When it comes to closing, we sell with emotion, but we always close with logic. And and logic comes from, you telling a story, creating a situation where the choice is obvious, using what the customer has told you earlier to make your point. Earlier you'd mentioned to me this, and this. Doesn't it make sense, if you want to keep the vehicle in new condition, that paint and fabric protection probably makes a little more sense than it has in the past, since your kids are getting older, they're more active, they're jumping in and out of the car, and that sort of thing. Those are the things that help the customer. Logic. Close with logic, sell with emotion. And then whenever we have an opportunity, we always want to offer solutions, multiple solutions, and ask them to choose. Well, based on what we're talking about, Mike, there's a couple of ways you could go. You could either do this or you could do that. You could either go with the, shorter term, the 6-year, 75,000 mile vehicle service contract, which is a little more budget friendly, Or you could go with the 7-year, 100,000 mile. It costs a little more per month, but it gives you the flexibility on ownership and the benefit that if you don't use it all, you can get refunded the unused portion. Which one do you think would work for you? You know, those types of explaining products that way and explaining your options that way to the customer puts you in that consultative position and helps them kind of think about it. Which one is the best? Well, you know, they're going to think about it and say, well, you know what? I didn't really think about getting back the money on the unused portion. It's not that much more, and I would like to be able to go a little longer. I think I'll go with that one. So, and then the other thing is, we talked about this a little bit in class, but it's super important. Never, never, never use a yes or no closing question. Does that make sense? You know, I hear that a lot, and the problem with that is customers can say no. So if you're going to use a yes or no closing statement, at least ask for action at the end of it. If that makes sense to you, Mrs. or Mrs. Customer, I just need your approval right here. Don't ever let that thing hang out there. And, you know, I guarantee we all have done it. Doesn't that make sense? Or, you know, a yes or no closing is a bad situation. So always ask for action. All right. This is just some stuff that I wanted. I'll send you, by the way, I'll send each of you this presentation. Do you both have PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay, I'll send this to you because there's some stuff in here like this that just gives you some word tracks a little bit. So I'll send them to you. And this is just kind of a, you know, acknowledge, transition, satisfy, need. You know, those are in the book. I just wanted to give you some more examples of what you could be saying. These are the ones you got to get prepared for. It's too expensive, don't want it, can't afford it, had it, never used it, had the protection before, never covered anything, I have plenty of insurance, I live in a good neighborhood, my friend told me not to buy it, can I get it later, do I have to take it? Can we think of any others?
How you doing?
Those are pretty much the common objections that I have. The basic ones are, you know, it's too expensive, or, you know, I've had them before, I've never used it, and can I think about it? Can I get it later? And my response to getting it later is, you know, especially if the customer's financing, is that this is pre-approved through the bank and it'll be built into your loan. And this way here, it'll be, you know, just $40 more a month, as to where if you come back later, where you won't get all the benefits of having an extended service contract or the coverage, and you have to pay out of pocket and it'll cost more. So,
well, try this, Mike. When the customer says, can I get it later? What you want to do is reinforce and check value. So you want to say to can I get it later? You absolutely can get it later. And I'm assuming you see the value, or you wouldn't even be considering it. Is that right? Yes. So a lot of customers, when they tell me that they want to put off the decision, tell me it's for one of two reasons. One, they're really not sure about the coverage, or two, they are sure about the coverage, but they just pushing their monthly payment too much. Which one is it for you? It's and most of the time they're going to say, well, it's going to be about payment. And then we go there. We know how to handle payment. We can reduce to ridiculous. We can talk about how expensive repairs are. We can talk about the fact that, if you were to, our average repair in our service department is $1,112.43. Let me ask you a question, Mr. Customer. If you were presented with an $1,143 bill tomorrow to repair your car, let's not even talk about how you'd feel about it. How would you handle it? If you're like most of my customers, they're probably not going to dip into savings or they may be a little short and they're going to end up putting it on a credit card. An $1,100 payment, what is that? Minimum payment on that's got to be $50, $60. So, it would take you, almost 2 years to pay that off. So we're really talking about protecting your budget and going that direction. Did you see, what I'm trying to do is walk them down a road, take them, using logic, helping them think it through a little bit more, and painting that picture. But always, whenever they want to, whenever a customer says they want to think about it, you have to confirm the value. So I'm assuming that you wouldn't even be thinking about it if you didn't see the value. Yes. And then again, ask a question, giving two answers, and let them choose between the two, and that gets you on the track that you want to go down. Okay. Most of the time, it's going to be budget. The one about protection, what did you say the other one was you get a lot, Mike?
Yeah, obviously it's too expensive, can I get it later? Or I've had the protection before and I never used it. Okay,
I like that one a lot because my answer to them is, well, you know what? Congratulations, good for you. But the reality is you did use it. And let them say, what are you talking about? We had the peace of mind knowing that if something happened during the term, it was going to be covered. It's a lot like health insurance or life insurance. You don't want to use it, but if you have to, got it.
Right. That's my response to that. I'd say it's kind of like, it's not a necessary, but if we look at it like health insurance, it's those necessary evils. You pray you never have to use it, but when it's there for you, you're thankful that you have it.
And then, depending on the situation, if they're trading in a 3 or 4 or 5-year-old vehicle on whatever they're buying, after you finish saying that, say, but you know what's really important is that we take a second here and reassess the risk. When you purchased that first service agreement, you saw some risk there, and you decided to offset that risk with a service agreement, and you were lucky enough not to have to use it. But your risk has gone up because the vehicle you're purchasing is more complex, and even if it was 95%, 99.5% reliable with 5,600 parts and components on the average vehicle, that still leaves about 70 things that could go wrong. You got to reinforce the fact that what they're getting now isn't what they had most of the time. What about you, Jeff? What do you hear? Anything on this list that isn't on this list that you hear, or what do you hear on the list?
Well, I only did the 2 day or the 1 day Tuesday, and I did 2 deals. So the first one was.
Right. You're still pretty new.
Yeah. But the first one was I got to the cost or the way they're grouped, and he said the cost, and then I just hit him with the fact that if what if you had a $2,000 bill come up, because he was pretty tight on his budget, say I don't know, 6 months from now, and you had a $2,000 bill come up, how would you be able to handle that? And he said that he really wouldn't be prepared to. He'd have to be prepared for it, and I told him, well, now you don't have to worry about that. It's going to be $2 a day, for you to. And does that? And then I told him to choose which one. I gave him the option of putting another $1,000 down, having a lower payment, and then even offering a 5-year. And so that, I think that was like his payments were going to be $290, and then it went with $1,000 down, and 5-year went to $327, but then with 0 down was $345. And then he's like, well, the $345 would make more sense. It's not that big a difference. And then he even bumped himself to the 7-year because it was only the difference between $345 and $360. The only thing I didn't get with
$60 payment walk, Jeff. That's a pretty good job.
Yeah. The only thing I didn't get for him was gap. He just didn't move for that. But
well, that's great. One of the
good job.
That's a good job. And with you and in your world, if I know the guy's a daily rider, or then it's really about transportation and what happens if the bike's down. If he's a recreational rider, then it's about lifestyle interruption, and
sure.
What ends up happening is the bike stays down for a while because I got to figure out how I'm going to come up with $1,000 or whatever it is. So those are the kind of things that I think you did a great job, and especially on giving them the option of down payment, more down payment, or a different product. we could go one or two ways. We could either go shorter term, which would get your payment here, or if you give me $1,000 down, we could stay at the same term, but it would do this. Which one works better? Most of the time, customers can see it in their budget more than coming out of pocket with that cash. So that was a great option, and keep that in mind whenever you're giving the customer an option. Is always throw in a monetary option because it'll make the other one look a little better.
Sure. Yeah, and then he just did it himself. So.
Yeah. Perfect.
I got you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to go through these. I'll send them to you, but this just kind of gives you a bunch of different things that you can use in the steps. Some word tracks, and so I'll leave you with that. What I'm talking about here is, I thought, this is kind of when we want to make that recommendation. But Mike, I thought for sure that the vehicle service contract was going to be a perfect fit for your needs. Can you share with me why you decided not to enroll? And they'll tell you whatever it was. And now you're having a conversation about it. In your world, Jeff, tire and wheel is a really good idea.
Yeah,
sure. It's one of those things that I think if the customer declines, you can kind of stop them and say, listen, based on what you told me and how much you ride and where you ride, I'd like to revisit this. I thought tire and wheel would be perfect for you, and you decided not to enroll in it. Can you tell me why? And they'll tell you whatever it is, and it gives you an opportunity to say, I know you're new to riding, but it's one of the things that is probably the biggest shock to customers is how expensive tires are and how often they need them. And, kind of go through that conversation with them in the Harley world. And it's certainly easy for you to do the same thing, Mike. I mean, people just aren't aware of how expensive tires are. And I'm just using tire and wheel as an example. It could be any product. But, if you really think it's something that they could use and there's a benefit to them that makes sense and you can relate it to their life, that's the key. I really thought that this product would be perfect for you based on what you told me earlier, which is blank, 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 blank. Can you share with me why you decided not to enroll in it? Most of the time it's going to be about payment, and now it's creating a solution to that budget or that payment issue that they have in their mind, giving them a different way to go. Well, what if and it could be, any of you use Zero Plan or anything where you can take the products outside of the loan and finance them?
What? Oh, you asking me?
Yeah, either one of you.
Oh, so actually, the second deal that I did, we couldn't fit it in the financing with the warranty, and the guy was expressive, up front, that he wanted one. And I mean, he had a $500 payment, and then he went ahead and took you put 10% down, and then it's 18 months at 0%. So he tacked on another $175 payment, and then the wife's shaking his head at him, and then he's like, well, I got other money you don't know about. So, but Craig popped in, my GSM. He popped in when I was going over it, and I guess I didn't. I asked him 3 different times. I should have just took the first yes. So I gotta realize that.
Well, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up. We can talk through it sometimes. When we've solved the problem, that's when we need to close and ask them for action or to make a choice. We can always go revisit it, but sometimes we will keep talking when the customer's already there. They're ready to say yes, and we keep going. So certainly shorter is better. I know I talked about telling stories earlier, but bring the story to the end and ask them to do something. But the thing, I didn't hear Mike's response. Mike, do you have a program where you can finance F&I products outside of the deal?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had to go help a customer do a delivery, so I stepped out for a second. Yeah, so that happened with me yesterday on a on a cash deal. I had a woman come in, and this whole deal happened while I was at the training down in Florida. But she came in and I presented the menu to her. She showed interest in the service contract, but it was 2284 for the cost. She goes, it's just. I go, is it just the cost of the warranty? She goes, yeah, I can't afford to pay that right now. I said, perfect. I have a 24-month 0% financing for you, and it requires 10% down. So do you have $284? She said yes. So I did that. She got 0%, and her monthly payment was $81 a month for 24 months.
Perfect. Great candidates for that opportunity are higher interest people. When the bank's capping you on a deal because of negative equity or whatever it is, lack of down payment, something like that. But that's an opportunity to move it outside of the deal. It's also a way to do it with cash customers. If you got a cash customer and they're not going to convert, you give them an out-the-door price, and at the bottom of your menu, instead of writing, you have your out-the-door price, and then you could put a 0 interest for 24 months. The products would be this price. Just a little, technique that works pretty well because the customers they get set in their mind sometimes that I'm paying, $27,000 out the door, and they just negotiated, an hour and a half to get a $27,000 out the door. So there's still $27,000 out the door, but you're taking all your products, putting them into a 24-month or 36 based on the amount, finance with 10% down, and show them that on the menu next to that 27 out the door, and you can still enjoy the benefits of all these products with just, $310 down, and it would be $110 a month for 24 months. But it's 0 interest. And remember when I told you I was going to show you all the options? This is an option. The other time
makes sense.
Yeah, and the other time is when they have a high interest rate. And Jeff, this might work for you really well. It's very common for people to be in the teens, in the high teens in your world, and that kind of limits us on payment and things like that. But when we can say, hey, I've got an idea that I think you're going to like, and you tell them and you say, and here's the best part, no interest. So instead of putting these into the payment at 17% interest, I'm going to take them out of that. I'm going to charge you no interest on these products, and that's going to be this much a month. So it's a great way to kind of pull that out as a unique solution, and don't be afraid to use that a little more. We tend to kind of forget about that. There's lots of ways we can.
Yeah, and the good thing too, Harley gives a Harley. Sometimes they give a Harley card where you get 0% for 12 months.
Yeah, and you know about that on the call sheet. They'll let you know right away if they qualify for that, right?
Yeah. So that's another angle to go, to maybe, sell a little more product too.
The key is
because not all we can only do service contract on the 0%.
Is it through us?
SPP?
Yeah, that's why.
Okay.
Yeah, we do all products on our deal.
Okay.
But you can do everything.
I gotcha.
Yeah. A mental note, I'll write that down and maybe we can talk about that. But that gives you more opportunity with every product. So that's
sure.
another day, another conversation.
I gotcha.
But it does give you quite an advantage. And, and anytime we can pull those things out, that's important. It also comes into play when we're pulling somebody out of the service department. It gives them an option as well. So keep that in mind whenever you're working that. It's one of those
service
tools of the trade. Don't forget to, have this stuff available to you. Remember when we talked about logic? Sometimes visual aids really help a person see the logic. And when we can make an example or show them value, they get it. this is the customer says, yeah, I'm interested in this product, and you can say, based on what you told me, how you're using the vehicle, and, you're running the kids around, you do all the shopping and all that. And, I've got one of those little shopping carts in my hand right now. I just pick it up and put them up and hold it and let them see it. And they say, when you're out shopping, this is your enemy right here. People get it. They know it. I mean, in a new car, if you ever find a primo spot, but there's a cart sitting at the end of it, and you choose not to take that spot because you don't want somebody to hit the cart that hits your car, and they'll shake their head, and you say, well, you don't understand what I'm talking about. Let me explain to you how this can help you. And then, those kind of things make a difference in closing as well. And whenever it makes sense or it feels natural, go ahead and do it. Plus, it brings all their senses into play. They can touch it. They can see it. Hopefully they can't smell it, but, they it makes a difference. ROs, being able to show them ROs and those types of things. We talked about that. Are you both using a declination document?
Yes.
Jeff, are you using one?
I don't know what is that.
That's a waiver. All the things
they went over the options with them and they declined it.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen that. I think we just have the menu, but there may be an option in menu link.
Yeah, you want to. I'm sure you have it in your form suite. We just have to. We'll find it for you.
Okay, that's where it breaks it down to a day, right? Per day or per month? Per month.
Per month, and it gives you an opportunity to take another shot at the customer.
Okay,
and
I got you.
I always have them sign it the way it is, and just so now I want to relax them even more. And once they sign it, I may do a couple more forms and then pull it back out and just say, hey, listen, I got something on my mind I want to talk to you about, and it's kind of bugging me. And talk to them about that one product that you makes sense, or if they took a vehicle service contract, talk to them about tire and wheel or maintenance. If they took GAP, talk to them about theft. If they took paintless dent but didn't take a diamond, talk to them about that. And that's a great place to make that recommendation. And the interesting thing about that buying decision is a little psychology going on there. And what I mean is, when you're checking out at Lowe's, what's at the register? Everything from soda to road flares, right?
Yep.
And gosh darn it, that's one extra thing. It's not that big of a deal, and that's the same psychology that goes into that. For that extra $6 a month, doesn't it make sense to go ahead with the key? Yeah, it does.
Right.
So it just gives you that one more opportunity, and it also gives them an opportunity to give into an impulse.
I gotcha. No, that makes a lot of sense.
All right, I'll send it to you so you can see it. We talked about that. Remember, kind of reviewing, and then we can talk about whatever you want. We got to begin with the end in mind. That interview is so important. Then you want to make sure that your preferred option is based on their needs and that you can defend that preferred option and explain each one to them and why it is a fit for them. And then consultative close with multiple products. And all of the top producers I work with really are pretty straight up and follow this process and do a good job at it. It takes some practice, but if you really focus in on the customer, let me go back to that slide. Hold on, there it is, the Yoda slide. If you're focused on the customer, you're listening and in a closing situation, that helps. And have patience. Think before you respond. Make sure you're getting all the information. Ask questions. Then offer solutions. Those solutions should be based on logic, and they've got to create some value in the customer's life. They've got to solve a problem, take away an inconvenience, add value in some way, and always come up with a solution. So that's the end of me talking. Is there anything you two want to talk about or anything that you want to bring up?
For me, it's still the leasing. I'm still just having a hard time with these customers to get them to buy products on a lease. We just came out with a brand new Kia Telluride. It's a big SUV. The customer, they leased it. It's got 20-inch wheels on it. It's brand new to our product, and my thing was I was thinking that I was maybe being a little too greedy in my pricing, to where I was trying to just keep an average of $1,000 for my PRU. So now I'm like, all right, well, I need this to make more sense for my customers. So I dropped my pricing on these, and this to give them. So in my menu, I break down, and this is what I wanted to run by you, John, because my menus that I showed you, they were a takeaway menu, right? So
right.
Now I break it down in the left column. I give them what pass key is, what tire and wheel is, what dent and ding is, what our glass coat is, and so I break it down there. And then in the preferred package, because we have in the preferred option, you have you can bundle all those three together. So you can get the dent and ding, the tire and wheel, the pass key, and windshield all. And it's more cost efficient to have them grouped together. And it was like, $16 more a month, and they just didn't want to go with it. And then his response is, no, I think we're all set. And I was like, all right, is it just because, is it just solely the price of it? And he's like, well, she never really drives. She puts 10,000 miles on a year. I told him, I go, I understand completely. It's not us. It's just the disrespectful people out there that don't care about your car. And, as soon as you get one little ding in your door, it's going to drive you crazy. And this just totally completes the hassle-free convenience of leasing and gives you that peace of mind. And I have an excess wear and use chart, and I show them what we charge for damage on these vehicles, and it gives you a price of what it costs. So, the cost of it is like, if all these things happen, they'd be paying almost triple the amount of what this coverage covers and the cost of it. And they
all
still
right.
don't go with it.
Well, let me back up on that a little bit. A couple of things, and you can just mentally, you can tell me, yes, I'm doing them, no, I'm not.
Yep.
Is in the interview, you want to reinforce the hassle-free aspect of leasing, right? First time you leased, if they haven't leased before. I would want to know from the desk why they're leasing. If it was a payment issue, and that's why we switched them to a lease, or were they always on the lease? If they were on the lease from the beginning, they understand leasing, they get it. That usually is an indication that they've done it before. If they've been switched to a lease, then that kind of gives me an indication that they probably were switched to a lease to achieve a payment. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. In this situation, this customer's been leasing already, so they understand the benefits and why you lease a brand new vehicle versus purchase one.
Okay,
so
great.
They understood that.
All right. Then what I would say is there's been some changes. Start out by that, saying those words. There's been some changes. Could you share with me your understanding of your responsibilities during the lease term?
Okay.
And they'll kind of look at each other, and they'll either tell you, or you can say, well, you have four main responsibilities.
Thank
obviously,
you very much for coming in. I
payment.
appreciate it.
You got to keep it insured.
Don't be a stranger. Come in on the weekends. We normally have stuff going on.
You've got to maintain the vehicle to factory specifications, and what's changed a little bit is how they're looking at vehicles when you bring them back off of lease now. We used to be able to do those inspections. We don't do them anymore. The manufacturer, the leasor, has a third party that does that for us, and so that they can be more objective and, incidentally, more critical. So here are some of the things that are happening. And then say, hey, this year was the first year that over 50% of lease turn-ins had some sort of charge at the end that wasn't covered under their contract. So I like for them to explain their understanding of it, because it gets them out of no mode, right? Right, they're ready to object and say no. So by asking them, could you share with me your understanding of your responsibilities under the lease? They quit thinking about saying no to you, and they start thinking about, well, what are they, right?
Right.
And
Okay.
you share them with them, and then talk to them about risk. And it's usually about payment,
Right.
in that situation. So there's a couple of ways you can go. A really great thing about leasing is down payment really has an interesting effect on a lease. Has a pretty dramatic effect on a lease. You could also talk about giving them their lease payment, like we said earlier, and taking the products outside of the lease if you wanted to. But I think that bundle you were talking about probably makes the most sense.
Right.
And related to something else that they've bought where they've bundled coverage. When I'm talking to a customer about a lease and they don't see any reason for it, I would ask them about their phone because it's probably sitting on your desk. And I would just say, I see that you have a smartphone. Yeah. Do either of you have coverage on your smartphone? Most people do now because if you've ever smashed a screen, you know what that's like. So do you have coverage on that? Yes. Okay.
Yep.
Why? Why do you have coverage on it? Because you don't want to worry about it. You don't want to have to deal with it. If something breaks, it's fixed. It's not. When you go get a new phone, it's with the plan, and you don't have to worry about any problems with that phone. And what I'm offering you here, and what I'd like you to consider, is that by doing this, you're completing and enhancing the lease experience by not having to worry about any of that. And just you got to really take your time getting there with them on a lease, because especially with a guy that says, nope, we're good. That's the guy I want to say, great, no problem. Before we go any further, I just wanted to know, could you share with me your understanding of your responsibilities on the lease? I'm required to ask everybody.
Most of the time they'll say, any dent or ding smaller than a credit card, I don't have to worry about.
That used to be the case, but that's not the case anymore unless Kia, that's what they say. Is that what they say at Kia?
Yeah, it's anything under 4 inches. Any scratch on bumper equal to or greater than 4 inches long across, you'll get charged for. Any dents or dings on hood equal to or greater than 4 inches long across. Any punctures in your body panels, scratches 4 inches long, dents or dings 4 inches long, chip in the paint more than half an inch, windshield repair, which I don't go over because that's a zero deductible, and wheel scratch equal to or greater than 4 inches long. So
what about interior?
Interior is tear in carpet or upholstery of any size, burn in carpet or upholstery of any size, stain in carpet or upholstery of any size.
Is covered?
It would be covered under like the excess wear and use. But my thing is with my excess wear and use, those things don't get fixed. So if you're leasing a $40,000 SUV, don't you want those things to be fixed? Because it drives you crazy. I understand it's a leased vehicle, but me personally, I'd rather have it look nice throughout the whole term. That's why I'm spending more money on a brand new vehicle. I don't want to look at those things because those things end up driving you crazy.
Okay, let's talk about that for a second, Mike. I just want to use that because this is a good example, and then I'm going to probably have to get going here, but we can do this again. That's a great scenario. But take them there slower. Don't jump on the objection. Say, okay, so share with me what is it about leasing that you like the most? Well, we like the fact that we can get a new vehicle every 3 years and that sort of thing. So you like driving new vehicles, yeah. What is it about a new vehicle you like the most? Oh, we like the technology, we like the smell, we like all of those types of things. It's great when, somebody gives you that, hey, is that a new vehicle? And you can tell them yes. And by the way, who's the first person you're going to show the new vehicle to? That's probably going to be my cousin, blah, 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 blah. Really kind of set them up on pride of ownership. And then ask them this question. When is a new car not new? A lot of people say when you drive it off the lot, that's not true because I saw how you keep your cars. You keep them in really good shape. The real answer is it's the first time you get that dent. And you've probably, maybe you've been there. And God forbid that's on the driver's side of the vehicle because then you see it every time you walk up to the car. You know what I mean? Take them slower. Take them there slower.
Okay.
And I think you'll have a little bit better luck. Because if we jump right on it, they can just shut you out and say no again. But if we're talking about other things other than what I just mentioned, their mind opens back up. They're thinking about how good the vehicle looks. They're thinking about how they can, kind of show it to their cousin, and he's going to be jealous, and they like the new car, and now we're going to talk to them about when is a new car not new. And that can be avoided. And it goes back to the point you made of we're not, waiting until you get to the end of the lease to worry about a dent. Who does that? I want to fix right now. I don't want to wait for years to get a dent, especially a 4-inch dent fixed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So use it to your advantage. Take that 4-inch stuff and how robust that coverage is, and say, listen, if you get a rip in your seat, are you going to wait until the end of the lease to get it fixed? A 4-inch tear? If you spill milk in your car, are you going to wait? No.
Well, let me ask you something. What's Kia going to do when you return that with a rip or a stain? Are they going to replace the whole seat and charge you for it?
Yeah.
Or reupholster it?
They don't cut corners when it comes to fixing the vehicle.
So why don't you get? Sorry, Mike. Why don't you get a quote on replacing like a back seat to one of your most common cars or something?
Yep.
Like the whole back seat.
I thought you said that the Kia does everything on the interior no matter what.
No, he's saying the coverage does.
No.
Yeah, the coverage does, but
I was reading off to you what they charge for. These are chargeable examples of excess wear and use. Because I don't push the excess wear and use as much. I push my Royal Signature, which is the dent and ding, the tire and wheel, your key replacement. I don't really get into I use my interior for my glass coat. My interior exterior protectant. My excess wear and use, it costs so much, and I'm capped at a certain amount. So it just doesn't. It makes more sense in my mind. I mean, I guess maybe that's just me just being single-minded on that approach. But I find more value in just bundling all three of those together at a lower cost and being able to have, because excess wear and use just means I'm going to have a dent in the car, and when I turn it in, it's going to have a dent on it, and I don't care if it has a dent. But my whole argument.
Mike, I'd flip your strategy. And use the one that you think is the best value as your second option, because then it'll make it look better. Hit them with that, throw them sell them on the higher price one, and let them say no to that, and say, you know what, there might be another way to go here, and then go to the one that you think is the best value.
Okay, I really like the just having that, because that's what I do with when I get into the vehicle service contract. I have the customer explain to me what their understanding is of our warranty. And then I get into it. So I just have to look at this the same way.
Yep. Try it and see what happens.
Okay.
Don't forget, you guys have my number. Call me in real time. You get a customer that stumps you, call me right after they leave. Let's talk about it. I know it's after the fact, but, it might help you the next time. Or if something comes to your mind, don't feel free to call me and we'll talk about it.
Well, I always, I look at these objections and stuff like a fight, right? Like have you guys ever been in a fight when you were young? You got into a fight one time, and as soon as you got punched in the face, your game plan changed completely. Everyone has a game plan until they get hit in the face. And that's what I do afterwards with these calls, or not these calls, but these customers that I have. I replay it afterwards. Oh, I should have done this differently. And I think that's what's helped me be more successful at it too, is kind of replay the scenarios and be better prepared for it for the next time.
I got one more thing for you to think about too, is that if we go into the deal thinking about it as being a problem solver and finding solutions, and not when they take a punch at us, not thinking of it as a punch, but thinking of it as a problem that I have to solve, our solutions will get softer. Because in the retail world, when we get punched, we're taught to punch back, right. and we kind of naturally do that quickly, and we give them the best punch we've got. And sometimes
Right.
we need to save that punch. We need to jab a few times before we throw that right. So,
Yep.
so what I mean is, start thinking solution, slow down in the closing situations, pause, think about what you're going to say. It really makes you look smarter, more credible, and everything else. Every time they say something, if you sit there and think about what you're going to say before you say it changes the whole dynamic of what you're trying to do, because then it's not a counterpunch. You're thinking about it, and now it becomes a solution. You're considering what they've said, those types of things. So try some of that.
Now, I just have to ask you one thing, John.
Yeah.
When you're doing your courses, make sure you use that as an example and quote me on that.
Huh?
I will. I like that.
From the class.
I think I'll get a slide of Mike Tyson, because he's got a quote of that too.
Yeah.
Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face, and it's
Yep, it's a good one.
I think that's his quote. So I'm going to go look for that.
It is his quote.
Jeff, as you're getting started here, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm sure Mike wouldn't even mind if you reached out to him, but use any resource you have. And sounds like you're you're off to a good start, so don't be afraid to do that, okay?